Welcome back to IAS Net Study. This is the ethics series, and this is the 38th video in this ethics series. In the last video, we were talking about ethical dilemma, and here we are going to see one among the ethical dilemmas, that is conflict of interest. And remember that this conflict of interest is extremely important from your exam perspective. If you see the previous year's question paper, a lot of questions you can come across. If you see the past 13 or 14 years question paper, initially questions used to be very direct: what is conflict of interest, give examples, these kind of things, then how do you manage it, what are the consequences, types, these were the questions. But later on, after 2020, things have changed. The questions have become indirect with respect to conflict of interest. And here let's get into the discussion of conflict of interest in a simple terminology, in a simple way. What exactly the conflict of interest deals with? See, you are a decision making authority, you are a civil servant. Now you have certain official duties, and your official duties, what is the aim of your objective of your official duties? It is public interest. That's your objective. But in order to fulfill your official duty, some of your private interest, it might influence your official duty, and this create some kind of conflict. See, you being a civil servant, your objective when you are at office, your objective is, with respect to social justice, your objective should be welfare of the people. But somewhere your private interest, family, it may be financial interest, it may be personal interest, it may be family interest, political, whatever, your private interests are influencing your official duties. This kind of situation gives rise to conflict of interest. See, here you're not, it does not, situation is that it looks like your private interest is influencing your official duty, but in reality, where it's not that you have already been influenced, it is not that you have already taken step in favor of in your private interest. That is not the case. Situation is that it can influence. This is the conflict of interest. Now, how do you manage it? How do you handle this situation? That is what extremely important. One thing, you being a civil servant, you need to understand these conflict of interest. See, these kind of conflict of interest, ethical dilemmas, these are very much evident in the conduct, in your working conduct. You cannot avoid it. These kind of situations arises, but you should be in a position to handle it. You should be in a position to manage these kind of dilemmas, these kind of conflict of interest. So basic, this is the conflict of interest. I hope you understood. Now, such conflict of interest can compromise, it can compromise your objectivity of civil services, it can compromise the fairness, and it can compromise the public trust. Let me give you guys an example. You are an IAS officer, and uh, the district you're working, you want to build some kind of infrastructure, maybe a road, hospital, or some school building. For that, you call for a tender, and now one of your family members have applied for this tender. Now you are the one who is going to award the contract. Now the situation from outsider, if I look at it, it is a clear conflict of interest. So people might think that you are going to favor your family member. So it looks like, I am not, see, I am a civil servant here, I am not favoring it, but from for other person from outside, it looks like there is a conflict of, and it there is a conflict of interest. But now the thing is, I have to manage this conflict of interest in an efficient way. If I don't manage it, then objectivity is going to suffer, because I have to take decisions based on rationality. If I am helping my family members, if I'm helping my friends, if I'm uh, giving this contract to my acquaintances, then objectivity suffers. Then there will be no fairness in the administration, and people are going to lose trust on the administration. People are going to lose trust on the public services. So this is what happens. So conflict of interest per se, there is no actual wrongdoing. There is a situation, if you don't handle it properly, it will lead to the wrongdoings. So this is the conflict of interest. Now, what are the types of conflict of interest? The first is actual conflict of interest. The example just which I gave you while explaining conflict of interest, that you are an IAS officer, you are supposed to award a tender or a contract. Now your family member have one of the family members have applied to it. Now this is the situation. Actual conflict of interest where public official directly, when a public official is directly influenced by private interest. Or let's take one more example. You are a bank manager, and one of your family members have applied for the loan. Now there is a conflict of interest. If there is some other person has to give so many documentation, he has to prove so many things, income, residency, all these things. But for your family members, from an outside perspective, it looks like the bank manager, he can compromise some of the things. So actual conflict interest is there. I am a bank manager and one of my family members, he has applied for a loan. Now it looks like actual conflict of interest. This is one thing. Here my official duty is to disperse the loan. I'm working in a government bank. Now my duty is to disperse the loan who deserves it. But now one of my family members, he has applied for it. Now situation is that there is an actual conflict of interest is there. This is one type. And the second type is perceived conflict of interest. Perceived conflict of interest, it means that there is a situation where there is a reasonable perception is there that private interest, my private interest, it is going to influence my official duty. As an example, I am a director of industries and commerce. Take an example that I am a director of industries and commerce. Now I have to take a decision regarding a company A. So the file of a company A has come on to my table. So I have to go through it. I have to take a decision. Now it is my official capacity. In my personal capacity, I am holding shares of this company. I am holding for maybe around 25 lakhs worth of share in my demat account. Now whatever decision I take, that is going to influence this company. So if I take very harsh decision, then this is going to showcase on the share pricing also tomorrow in the market. So it looks like there is a perception, it looks like there is a reasonable perception that my private interest, what is my private interest? My private interest is the stock prices. So my private interest might influence my official duty here. My official duty is to be neutral with respect to companies. I am a director, so I have to go through with the rationality. I have to take decision based on the reason, based on the logic. But here, since I have share, so it looks like my private interest, it is going to influence my personal interest. Sorry, my private interest, it is going to influence my official duties. So this is perceived conflict of interest. And the third is potential conflict of interest. Here at this point of time there is no conflict of interest, but in future there may be. Whatever actions you take, this is going to influence, help you, or it is going to, your private interest is going to be influenced by your today's official duties, today's public duty. You are an IAS officer, and whatever the actions you take today, this is going to influence in future. As an example, you are, again, you are working as an IAS officer, and whatever the actions you are doing, somewhere you are doing in the favor of ruling party. The intention is that once you retire, you want some posting from a ruling government. So you are going to retire after 3 4 years, but right now whatever you're doing in favor of a ruling party, ruling government. So intention is that in future there might be some help from the ruling government. So potential conflict of interest. So an officer negotiating with a firm where they expect future employment. So there are three types of conflict of interest: actual conflict of interest, perceived, and the potential conflict of interest, right? Now see, conflict of interest, these kind of situations are there. These are not wrong in themselves. See, you are supposed to face these kind of ethical dilemmas, these kind of conflict of interest. But the thing is, they naturally arise in a social setup, in a professional life. Now the thing is, how do you handle it? How do you manage it? That distinguishing, that creates that distinguishing. See, what are the ethical problem arises when you don't handle this in an effective or efficient way? When you hide this conflict of interest, then this is going to create a problem. When you don't declare there is a conflict of interest, when you don't declare it, it means that you are manipulating the situation. Somewhere you have that intention to get benefit out of your official duties, and if you don't manage it properly, then it becomes ethical problems. And if your personal interests are influencing your official duties, then it becomes ethical problem. If you manage it, it won't be a problem, it is not wrong. If you don't manage it properly, then it becomes a ethical problem here. So conflict of interest must be identified early, that is the first thing, and it has to be disclosed. And there should be transparency also, it has to be disclosed. There should be a transparency also, disclosed transparently. And it has to be managed in a very efficient way, managed through recusal, reassignment, or oversight. We are going to see it in detail in managing, but as of now, if it is managed properly, it is fine. If you don't manage it properly, then it becomes ethical problem. So it has to be identified, it has to be disclosed, and it has to be managed. So these are important steps with respect to conflict of interest. Now See, ethical failure lies not in the existence of conflict of interest. I told you that conflict of interest per se, there is a situation where my family member has applied for a tender. This situation is not something illegal. The situation is not something unethical. Because the thing is, yes, I am a separate individual. Even though the person is a family member, member is a separate individual. He has the complete right. Constitution has given him the right also, so he can apply for a tender. But the thing is, how do I handle it? From my official capacity, how I handle it, that's what it matters. If I don't handle it properly, then it becomes ethical failure here. So if I concealment, misuse, management, that leads to the ethical failure. Transparent identification, proper management of conflicts protects the. See, if I manage properly, then it is going to uphold the integrity, it is going to prevent corruption, and it is going to preserve the public trust in institution. If you don't, then consequences will be negative. What are these negative consequences? Loss of public trust. If I am giving this contract to my family members, people are going to lose trust in the administration. See, the next time if there is any these kind of tender, people are not going to apply for it. People know that ultimately this officer is going to award this tender to his family member only. There is no point in applying it, so they are going to avoid it because there is no trust in the administration. So there is a loss in public trust, and whatever decision I am making here, my private interest, it is getting influenced. So here, biased and unfair decision, so this goes against the values of impartiality. And promotion of corruption, favoritism, nepotism. Obviously, I'm supporting my family members, I'm supporting my friend. So promotion of corruption, nepotism, favoritism, and this is going to damage the institutional integrity and institutional morale also altogether. This is going to damage the image of a public administration, and legal, reputational, and economic harm to the entire country whole together. If see, these public administration, public services are building blocks actually. If there is no integrity, this is going to harm the reputation, and this is going to harm the social fabric as well as the economic fabric. So these are consequences of not handling conflict of interest in an efficient way, in a transparent manner. So these are the consequences. Now let's move to the managing part. How do you manage it? How exactly, what should be the way to manage these conflict of interest? Effective management of conflict of interest is essential to protect integrity, impartiality, and public trust. This is what we saw that if you manage effective way, so outcome will be positive. If you don't manage it, outcome will be negative, consequences will be negative. So the objective is not merely to avoid corruption, but to ensure that decision making remains fair, transparent, and oriented toward public interest. See, I want to uh, I want to handle conflict of interest in an efficient way. One thing is I can avoid. There will be no favoritism. There will be no nepotism. There will be no partiality. There will be no corruption. All these things. These are one side. But on the other side, on the brighter side, this handling conflict of interest efficiently, effectively makes entire administration, entire decision making process fair, transparent, and it ensures that administration is working towards the welfare of the public. So this is what it does. So consequences are extremely positive if you handle it in a good way. Now how do you manage it? The first and foremost step is, there is a conflict of interest in front of you. How do you manage it? First is, your priority should be the public interest. So now I told you that one of your family members, they also applied for this particular tender. Now how do you take decision? Your decision is based on a public interest. It is not that who has applied for the tender. It is about, there are 100 people, they have applied for this particular contract, and you go through with all these 100 contract, and which is the best for the public welfare, you choose that. So your intention is the public welfare. So you're serving the public interest, priority is the public interest only. So it does not matter whether your family members apply for it, whether your friend circle, anyone from your friend circle has applied for the tender, it does not matter. So as long as you're serving the public interest, you're fine. So your public officials must solely act on basis of law. So you take decisions based on the law, based on the procedures only, based on policy and merit of each case. It's not dependent on your connection, personal connection. And decisions should be disinterested, free from personal, family, religious, political, and professional bias, free from all the biases. From a neutrality perspective, you are taking a decision, and private interest should never influence your official duties. So first and foremost is that priority to the public interest. And the second way is, you have to support transparency. Transparency is that there is a conflict of interest. Now you maintain the transparency. Whatever the decision you are making, you give the complete reasons to it. See, I have selected this particular tender, whatever the call they have given. I'm And when you accept this particular tender, a tender given by person A, you have accepted it. Now you give the proper reasons that why have you selected A, and what is the reason of rejecting all others. There are 10 people, you have rejected all other 9, and now you give the reasons for all others, and you put everything in front of the people in an open public domain. Now you are maintaining transparency. When there is a transparency, people can go there, people can post it in your social media, or post it in your website, district website. So people go there, people go through with the reasoning, people, there will be public scrutiny, there will be social audit. When this happens, when there is a transparency, it will lead to the public scrutiny. Now it means that you are confident enough that you are not mismanaging anything, you are not, your official duties are not influenced by your personal interest. So support the transparency, and this transparency will lead to the public scrutiny. This transparency will ensure social audit. This is another way of managing conflict of interest. Officials and institutions should act in a way that can withstand the closest public examination. Ethical responsibilities goes beyond legal compliance, includes adherence to public service values such as impartiality, the same thing. Now the third is, how do you manage? The third way is that promoting individual responsibility and personal example. Individual responsibility is that whatever the decision I am making, I am accountable to it, I am answerable for my actions. So first thing, you prioritize the public interest, and then everything is transparency. You, whoever want to inquire, whoever want to examine, they can go and they can do all these things. There is a transparency factor. And the thing is, maintain, promote that individual accountability, individual responsibility. Now when you maintain that, people build that confidence. When you are open for the questions, when you are responsive, then there will be a public trust. So public officials must internalize ethical standards. See, ethical standards, what are the ethical standards of civil services? Accountability, empathy, integrity, these are the ethical standards. When you have these ethical standards of accountability, responsibility and responsiveness, it means that there will be people participation, there will be trust on the administration. So this is what happens. The third way of managing is promoting individual responsibility. If you promote individual responsibility, if you promote these kind of ethical value system, this will create ethical leadership. And ethical leadership, it shapes the institutional culture in a positive way. This is the third way. And the fourth way is that you create that entire organizational culture that is intolerant to these kind of conflicts. Conflicts are there, you cannot eliminate the conflicts, conflicts will be there, but you're not going to entertain these conflicts. The another way is that, one thing, internally I am prioritizing public interest, I have all these value system, I am maintaining transparency at individual level, but you are working as a part of organization, district administration, and you maintain these values in your organization level also. So you transform organizational culture also into these ethical culture. So when you have this kind of culture, the organization or the institution itself is not going to tolerate these conflicts. And then fifth one is that strengthening institutional mechanism, the same, the extension of previous point, strengthening the institutional mechanism. So there are certain steps you can make sure to eliminate or to handle these conflicts in an efficient way. What are the mechanisms? Regular ethics training and sensitization in the organization, whistleblower protection, and independent vigilance and oversight of oversight bodies or regulatory bodies, performance appraisal that values integrity. These are some of the ways you can manage conflict of interest. So this managing of conflict of interest, there are two level: individual level, how do I manage priority to the public interest and these foundational values, and at the organization level. At organization level, same foundation value should be there at the organization level, and also there should be some mechanisms to ensure these kind of ethical behavior. So these are some of the ways to manage conflict of interest. So you can go through with that again. So how do you manage? 5 points. So this is all. Conflict of interest are inevitable in complex governance system, but they must be transparently identified, ethically managed. A combination of individual integrity, institutional safeguard, and public scrutiny. See, if you want to handle or manage conflict of interest in a organization in an efficient way, there are three aspects you need to focus. I am an officer. At individual level, I have to be ethical, and organization level or institutional level, there should be mechanisms to support these ethical consideration. And at the public level, even at the citizen, they should also be support, they should also be in a position to question or to support these ethical consideration, ethical framework. So public scrutiny, when, see, when individual level I am open for these kind of ethical standards, I am adopting ethical standard, I make sure that organization I am working, institution I am working, there also ethical standards are maintained. When ethical standards are maintained in my institution, public, they develop that confidence and they can approach, they can question, and they can scrutinize the organization and institutions. When they start participation, then they also give contribution to eliminate this conflict of interest. So there are three dimensions to manage this conflict of interest: individual level, organization level, and from a public level. So three ways to handle it, three dimensions to handle it. This is the managing. Now let us see the exact step, the practical steps for managing the conflict of interest. See, these are broad perspective, broad ideology, philosophies how to deal with conflict of interest. Now let's talk about practical steps. See, there is a conflict of interest in front of you. How do you handle it? The situation is there. You are a civil servant, and how do you handle it? Let's see the practical interest. The first is, now I am a public servant. I have seen notice conflict of interest is there. Now, first thing what should I do is that I have to register, I have to announce that there is a conflict of interest in this particular actions, whatever department I'm working, there is a conflict of interest. So I have to declare, I have to record this conflict of interest in official register. This is first thing. And second thing is, I have to restrict myself with respect to this particular situation. Now I have registered there is a conflict of interest. Now my involvement in this particular situation, I have to take a step back. It should not be too much. I have to restrict myself, not too much involvement in that. And the third step is that, see, there is a, if too much, if there is a situation where my presence is required in that particular situation, and I don't want to involve in a very large extent or very involved position, or very much involvement I don't want to see in this situation. Now what can I do? I can recruit a third person. Why am I recruiting third person? Because I want to maintain the neutrality, because I am answerable to people and I want to maintain the transparency. So I am recruiting a neutral third party, and this third party, he is going to involve in this situation to take decisions. So first I registered, second I restricted myself in this situation, in the situation of conflict of interest, and then in order to maintain the neutrality, I am recruiting the third person to take decisions and to take to make actions in this particular situation. And the next is remove. See, I can remove myself from this decision making. This is also one of the practical step to manage the conflict of interest. So me being a public servant, one of my family members, they have applied for the tender, applied for the contract. Now I am removing from decision making process, since already there is a third party is there. Now I am removing myself from this decision making. And then relinquish. Relinquish is that, see, I have a public interest, I have a private interest. Now I have taken steps to uh, distance myself from this public interest for official duties or my decision making authority here. Now I have private interest, my family member, my brother has applied it. Now what can I do? Now I can get rid of this private interest. It means that I have told my brother to take back that tender he has applied for. There is a voluntary action here. So relinquish. So this is another way of removing, managing conflict of interest. So I am relinquishing my private interest here. So this is another step. And ultimately, if I could not able to handle it in any way, ultimate step is that resigning. Resigning is something extreme, and it also showcases that you cannot able to, you're not in a position to handle these kind of situation. It shows that inability, incompetency. I don't suggest that, but this is also one among the practical steps. See, why am I writing this practical steps is that this is very much important for your case study, and most of your case studies deals with conflict of interest, ethical dilemmas only. And these kind of steps, practical steps, how do you manage, you can replicate in your case studies, the paper 2 also. There these comes in handy. So keep these things in your mind. The way or how do you take decision, these are some of the steps, right? So practical steps, I think this is it. This is regarding conflict of interest. In the next video, we are going to talk about various approaches to find a solution for conflict of interest, to find a solution for ethical dilemma in a larger perspective. Here we talked about managing conflict of interest. Now let's get back to the original discussion of ethical dilemma. Ethical dilemma subtopic was that conflict of interest. Now we have finished conflict of interest, how to manage conflict of interest. Now let's get back to the ethical dilemma. Now understand how to resolve ethical dilemma. And understanding resolving ethical dilemma, one thing, you being a civil servant, you will learn how to handle ethical dilemmas. The second thing is, as I told you, for case studies, it is extremely important. It comes in handy. It helps to express your thought process with respect to these kind of dilemmas. So I'll see you guys in the next video, talking about how to resolve ethical dilemmas. Thank you so much for watching. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel. I'll see you guys again in the next video. Have a good time.